What did I say we could do? This is my fault. Okay.
I really care. Do we get to have these?
Yes, we're going to start it right now. Hello everyone, welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Ignacio and I'm the Executive Director of the HEAL Project, and I'm also the host of Connecting the Dots, and we are here with...
I'm Koja. I am mixed race Oglala Lakota with a history in trauma.
And Koja is also my chosen family member, so I'm really happy that Koja is here to be talking about this documentary that we watched the other day. And I know this documentary, we had the pleasure of getting it from Mia Mingus. Thank you, Mia. And I know that Mia uses it in the trainings that they do in transformative justice in the organization Bay Area Transformative Justice Collective.
Hollow Water focuses on the Ojibwe people. And how they handle sexual abuse on their reservation on the east side of Lake Manitoba.
Yeah, so we're going to be checking out how they tapped into their cultural practices and how we can learn from that. So, yeah, this documentary was really intense but really eye-opening and has a lot of good information. I mean, obviously Mia's using it in her training. This is a great documentary to see how shit gets done.
Yeah, I think that one of the things about this documentary that really caught my attention is that, well, for one, is the like actual holistic approach to healing, and we hear this word holistic and radical. Everything's holistic and radical, and in this case we really are talking about like emotional, physical, and spiritual healing. And the language around healing versus rehabilitation, which is a topic that is constantly going on about rehabilitation as far as abusers. Right.
Or even like the language that we use and stuff. Like I just saw something about this idea that people who do harm, sometimes we say they're perpetrators, but we also say that they are, we say that they're perpetrators, we say that they're abusers, but we also use like language like monsters. They're total monsters. And I think that the things that people do can be horrific and monstrous, the things that they do. But when we start distinguishing people as monsters, it's almost like this thing that we cannot change a monster. So the idea of rehabilitation is like not even on the table right there. Right. And it's like throw them away. What do you do with a monster? You lock them up and throw them away. Right.
Yeah, you put them in jail. Wherein, in this documentary, they spoke of, the jail system that they interact with very specifically as just, a place that's not unlike where we live, here on Turtle Island, which is, to say a place where, folks go and then they do their time and then they come out and then the cycle continues.
Right.
And this, the thing that they have created, this approach that they have created, like completely turns that idea on its head. And the part that like continued to get my attention over and over in this was that the family that was focused on were the abused children saying that they wanted to be reunited with their family. Right. That they wanted this, they sought this out, and they believed in this system, these teachings, and bringing back these teachings that already existed but needed to be re-accessed.
Yeah, that was the thing too. That it was like they were surprised because I think the folks from the reservation were talking to a judge, right? Because they were trying to negotiate their way of doing this. They were like, what's the choice here? Either they go to prison or they come to our system, the system that we are resurrecting, where the community gets together and we decide what's going to happen. We come together as a family and decide how and everyone's a part of this process. And the thing when they were talking to the judge was saying that he was so surprised that the majority of the community members were in full support of doing this process.
Right.
You know, like I was like, that's wonderful. And what it does, what I think about it, that's so beautiful, is that what it does is it literally, this process literally does it, or I should say, putting someone in prison and going through the legal courts literally does the same thing that CSA does. The re-victimization is the same. It's like this, you don't want to, this is the secrecy, it's like the shame, it replicates the same kind of fucked up shit that CSA does, but this doesn't. This actually does the thing that the Heal Project wants to do, and it's like community. It's like everyone has to get involved. It's like the other way around, it's like you're by yourself, suffering this in silence, not telling anyone, right?
Right.
And this other way is the entire community is helping uplift you and take care of you and have say and witness. Like witness. That's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. I think, like, you know, just to be clear, and I think I might have already said it, but we are talking about the Ojibwe people who are on the eastern side of Lake Manitoba, so they are First Nations. And they were very clear that, you know, like that the teachings already exist within the culture. And, you know, for reasons that I think a lot of us are already aware of, which is that, like, the control of government agencies, and, you know, organized religion, specifically Christianity, and all of these forces have caused so much fear within the culture, specifically, you know, with elders, that elders have either, like, forgotten or stepped back in their roles in, you know, making certain that these things are not happening, you know, and then when they are stepping in to shift the cycle.
Yeah.
So, you know, the it's already there. The values, the ethics, the spirituality that inhibits this kind of behavior exists.
Yeah, but it's funny, but because the violence itself was the thing that took it away. You know, colonization, right? It's like it took away the thing that they were using already, and it was like this moment of being lost, you know, and then coming back to it and saying, wait a minute, we have this already, it's here, and then fighting for it, because they said in the beginning that some people were like not feeling this, that this is not the way it should be taken care of. But shit, after the whole 5-year process, like these, you could see the shift, like this father and this mother, like these are, to talk about a little bit of the actual thing, this particular reservation, there was a high number of CSA cases, very high. And so obviously people were like, this is a problem, we need to do something. And this is when really thinking about what's going to work best for the community as a whole, rather than taking a person out, right, or getting kids to go to foster care, right, that it had to be this holistic approach, as Koja was saying. And through this process that you find, and I have to say wow to the mother and the father who did this documentary, like wow, that is not an easy thing to be like, I abused my children.
Yeah, it just starts out like that, the whole documentary.
That's the first thing. Like, I abused my children. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like, I don't even get that from the person, you know, who did that to me. We don't even get to hear that at half the time. And here they are on camera, a part of this process because they believe in it and want to be a part of their community and their people, you know, not to be taken away. And it was just, like, incredible to watch. And then the girl, the daughter, saying, I'm not afraid to be alone
with my dad.
I'm not afraid to be alone. And I was like, that
was really like the wrap up, or towards the end, I think, of the documentary, was like they were saying was the young daughter, I mean probably a teenager, I think, saying like that there was a time when I was so scared, I was so afraid of my dad, and you know that bad things happened when I was with him, and now I'm not. I mean, the dad, you know, meanwhile, is sitting, you know, right next to her, and she is saying, like, I trust my dad. I trust being alone with my dad now. And I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that.
Yeah. And not that, like not in a talk therapy kind of way. This was very different. This was really,
Indigenous?
yes. Yes. Yes, very indigenous. This is the healing circle, and it was just amazing. How can we do a circle process or transformative justice outside of indigenous spaces? Like, how do we do this when someone is, sexually abusing a child, or when someone is a monster, right? And so this is, definitely a process, and they show us this process so beautifully. They show us this process because really and truly, when you think about it, the alternative, what we have, has it stopped CSA? No. Have they rehabilitated sex offenders? Really? No.
No, we have failed.
Yeah.
We continue to fail.
Right. And so this is working in this community. It has worked. And they dig deep because they showed that chart. The chart.
I loved the chart.
Yeah.
The chart. So it's sort of like the chart that they made. I'll just describe very briefly. It was basically they said, I think, their family tree.
Yeah.
Almost, except for not a family tree in the way that I think, we think about it in a colonized way, but in the paper had this side of the family, Uncle so and so, had a history of addiction and sexual violence and suicidal ideation, and there was it was almost like color coded for each thing. It was actually really amazing, and I've never seen anything like that either. And then the tree branched off from there, so that you could see. I think that most of us are pretty clear at this point that it is a cycle, but this tree really beautifully, terrifyingly beautifully, but it's real.
Yeah.
Illustrated that.
And what the beautiful thing too about that is it makes it so concrete for them, right? They show where the abuse began, and they say this is where the abuse is going to end, because they have 5 children together, and they abused 2 of their daughters, and you can see the lines on the daughters on the end, the ways in which they abused them. So they name that shit. They were like, we abused our daughters in all of these ways, and we're healing with them now, and that's it. This is where it ends. So when they have children, it's not going to happen. And of course, it's the intergenerational piece. It's like we can't think that we're going to end CSA by this person right here, by individually, right? It is community healing, it is community input, it is the intergenerational work. It's like we're healing our ancestral lineage by healing ourselves and working with family. This is how I feel. Like I am healing my ancestors who were sexually abused, who were incest survivors, because when you go farther back, they didn't have the voice, they didn't have any of it, and it's like we owe it to ourselves, and then we owe it to others so that we can prevent that. And this is just so powerful. I think everybody needs to watch this documentary to even see how they do it.
Yeah. And I think that one of the questions for me that they did actually end up answering towards the end was so what about when somebody doesn't own up? What about when someone doesn't participate in this process? And there was a lot of talk about actual taking of responsibility,
right,
for harm. And it's pretty concrete, which they said is that if you cannot admit what you've done, you don't get to remain in the community.
Yeah.
Period. Mm-hmm. And there's not further, and then that means jail, or that means, beyond that.
Right.
But you don't get to stay in the community, and the community in itself is so crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. That piece too, they have to admit it, but even in that piece, the community is still supporting them, because in the beginning they said the mother and the father completely denied it,
right,
and they fought and said no, and the community was like, no, you're gonna own up to this.
2 years.
You're gonna do it, right?
Yeah, 2 years.
You're gonna fucking own up, and they fucking owned up, and they owned up for real. And that, it's not like I didn't do it and then everybody's like, all right, we can't do anything. I mean, they literally showed a process of sticking in there and really telling them, you need to take accountability or else there's no healing, there's no or journey towards healing, there's none of it. Yeah.
Well, because accountability is a, I think when done right, it is a community process.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't have accountability on your own. That doesn't work that way. That's a piece of it. That's like a little start if you're the one that's initiating it and saying, I need to hold myself accountable, therefore I need to talk to other people to help me in this process, right?
Right.
And yeah, and they do it, and the way they talk about their committees and stuff, because I was wondering how do they do this, and they talked about having the one guy that goes to confront the accused, so this person has to go, and I was like, wow, and I just started thinking about how they manage it, right? Because it is the people in your community. It's not a cop, like it's not a cop or a stranger coming. This is like maybe your cuz, like coming up.
Everybody's your cuz.
Like, yo, like this has been, happening, and then like having that conversation, like that's a different dynamic. That's a very different dynamic. That changes the whole structure from the onset,
Oh, for sure.
And this is how I think about the future. I mean, this is the future, in my opinion. This is the future of how we think about healing in its totality, right? Because we can definitely talk about all the things that come up for survivors in terms of rage and justice, and I do justice because that means different things to many different people. Revenge, they want to be seen. There's so many reasons, there's so many things, it's a very complex and very layered thing. That is why I think this process is just so much better, because it's like, it's not a cookie cutter model. It's not a what do you call it, the throwaway culture,
right?
Monster, there you go.
Right.
And then while you're in there, all we're doing is repeating the violence, because what's going to happen in prison with that person, probably going to get sexually assaulted, especially if they know what that person did. And actually, we condone that as humans.
Yes, we do.
We actually say, I wish you get raped in prison.
Yes, all the time we say that.
And I'm like, wow. And somebody was just talking to me about that. Somebody mentioned and said a comment that when we do that, what we actually do is we're not even thinking about the actual person that is doing the rape either. What brought that person to rape? And that, it's just
who are we hoping rapes them?
Yeah.
When they get to prison and we say, oh, I hope you get raped.
Yeah.
Which often they do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at what point does it cross our minds about the people who are then doing that raping?
Yeah, exactly.
What about those people?
Yeah. It's not simple. This is not simple. And in no way am I minimizing anybody's experience and stuff, but this is definitely an avenue in which we need to to really gravitate to. Many have already, and many more need to, because the police and the criminal justice system, or the justice system, or the legal system, however the fuck you want to call it, does not work. It does not work for people of color. It does not work for victims. It does not work for survivors. It doesn't work for harm doers. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. So we need to be really, now as we rethink defunding the police and stuff, is a further conversation, actually, to further the work that so many people have been doing in transformative justice. Jairus Dixon, Mia Mingus, Leah Lakshmi, so many people who've been, Dean Spade. I could just go on and on and on. This isn't new. And it's not new because it is something that has come from First Nations, Indigenous people, and now we are hopefully and respectfully honoring that tradition, and also taking parts of that to use, because that is an invaluable tool for community.
Right. The tool being, in this case, to sum it up, is the where the victims and the offenders come together in a healing circle, which we know as Indigenous people is the medicine wheel.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic. But if you look to the medicine wheel, these things are already written for us.
All right. Just to witness. I'm just so happy that I got to witness this, because sometimes it's outside of our heads. Like when we talk about transformative justice or healing circles, like, or no prisons, people are like, how the fuck can that happen? But this is an example of how it can happen.
Yes, it paints a very clear picture for you.
Yeah. I'll just say, Seneko Kakona.
All right, Pila man.